Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Sharon Florentine. Welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar. I am pleased to be here today. I just have a few housekeeping items I need to go through with you. First, please take note that this webinar is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of it, you'll be able to go back and watch it again. We are taking questions throughout, so you can use the Q&A tab on your webinar console to submit questions, and we will get to as many as possible today. If not, we will go ahead and send those over, and our speakers will get back to you afterwards. Finally, stick around till the end when we will be giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So stick around until the end to see if you are a winner. Before I hand it over today to Joe and Sedke, I would like to ask you, would you please take a second and check out this poll that we have for you. Should be popping up on your screen any second. And what we'd like to know there is, are you using an API management platform to manage and secure your APIs? Yes, I'm using an API-M platform. No, I'm not, but I'm considering it. Or no, I'm not using an API-M platform and do not have any plans to do so. And if you wouldn't mind, like I said, taking a second and recording your response there, that will inform Joe and Sedke as they move through their presentation. And yeah, all right, so we'll give it just another couple seconds here.
And just to avoid being the people who use acronyms, which no one else knows, API-M, API management, of course. Okay, and whatever API stands for, you should automatically get an Amazon gift card, but it's not up to me. So, Joe, do we know what API stands for? I don't think anybody does.
Application Programming Interface. Did I get it?
I stand corrected.
We know our stuff. We know our stuff here. All right, cool. So we've got a few responses, I think. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll so that you guys can go ahead and get into it here. And let's go over. You're seeing the responses there?
Yes.
All right, cool. With that, I'm going to turn my camera off and put myself on mute, and you guys can take it away. I will see you towards the end.
Thank you very much, Sharon. We'll look forward for Sharon joining us towards the end so we can talk about, or rather answer all your questions as they come in. So please keep dropping them in the Q&A chat. You know, no such thing as a tough question. Let's put Joe on the spot. Let's put myself on the spot here and make us work. So my name is Sedke. I'm a solutions architect at Tyk. Here at Tyk, we're a global software company. Our job is to provide you folks with a global API management platform, whether that's SaaS or on-prem or all flavors. We're a cloud agnostic, Kubernetes native, and all the other fancy buzzwords. Amongst API-M, we also offer GraphQL products such as our Universal Data Graph. That is API management for GraphQL, as well as Tyk's no-code solution to being able to stitch together all of your backend services and provide them as a single GraphQL schema. So let's go here. So that's what we're going to be talking to Joe about today, is how Joe, the CTO of Branch, joining us. Thank you very much for being a part of this, Joe. How Branch is using GraphQL and Tyk's Universal Data Graph to disrupt the insurance market. So one last point here before I hand it over to Joe for introductions. For those of you watching, you can grab Tyk's Universal Data Graph white paper in the handouts section of the platform there and take that away for reading. So without further ado, Joe, if you'd be so kind to introduce yourself and talk about Branch. What is Branch? What do you folks do? Who are you working for? Who should be looking at Branch, and so on. So if you could take us away.
Yeah, absolutely. So Branch, we sell home, auto, renters, and umbrella insurance. It's our insurance. We make it. We pay the claims. If you've ever bought home and auto insurance before, you know it can be a very painful process. Usually requires an agent. Usually takes a couple hours, days, maybe weeks. And that's why people don't usually shop that much. It's also why every other ad on television is for insurance, just to for you to get those companies in your consideration set when you shop. Branch does a number of things differently. One of the things that Branch does is it's the only company in the United States to sell an agentless price for home and auto insurance. So, you know, you do pay a decent amount for the agent. And if you want to buy Branch to an agent, you can. But you can also buy it direct, and it's cheaper if you buy it direct. And so I'll give you an example, though, of how fast Branch is. And so if I put in a name and address, this is a test data universe we live in. I say I want to buy home and auto. And what Branch does is Branch pulls instantly information to answer those questions that ordinarily it would take you hours to go through. We'll walk you through and ask you to confirm details about your home and your car and everything. But you don't actually have to put anything else in. And if we pull the data correctly, you can just buy, and that's it. You buy just by giving us payment information, and you're done. So, you know, Branches has improved upon the experience, especially if you buy home and auto insurance. You can also just buy home insurance or just auto insurance. All you got to do is go to ourbranch.com. You can read about it. And we're in 9 states in the U.S. We'll be national. We'll be available to more than 50% of the U.S. Later this year, and we'll be fully national by the end of next year.
And for those of you in Canada like myself, just keep your fingers crossed, and we can just keep hoping here. That's awesome. Thank you very much. It's incredible. I didn't think buying insurance could be fun. Thanks, Joe. What problems? Let's get technical for a second. That's why we're here, right? So what problems was the company facing? What made you realize, okay, so we need API management? Yeah, so talk to us about that.
Absolutely. So this is a great experience, especially if you're a consumer, you're going to our website. But one of the places that Branch really shines is where we embed with partners. And so, you know, if you look at our website, you'll see we partner with the largest home security systems in the U.S., largest mortgage lender in the U.S. And the goal is that you're already doing things that involve insurance. You're getting home security, which is going to save, you're going to save money on your home insurance. It's going to help pay for that home security system. Or you're getting, you're refinancing your mortgage. You're buying a new home. You need home insurance, and you need new home insurance. You can't take your home insurance with you from home to home. That's not how it works, at least not in the U.S. And so in this world, then, it's great to embed. It's great to have the Branch price right in someone else's experience. But we can't do that as well by asking people to come to our website. It takes them out of the flow of where our partners are. And so we're having lots of requests of, can you please make your API that drives this site that I just walked you through, can you please make that API available to us so that we can do the same wonderful thing, the name, address, you're done, within partner flows. And so we went out and we went looking for what is the best way to do this, because our back end here, we've got a great API. We went API first. Actually, it's several APIs. And we knew we didn't want to build this thing. This was going to be a distraction for us. We wanted to put on more, you know, sell more and different types of insurance, for example, instead of build, you know, an API abstraction layer. And so we went out looking for what could we put in front of our APIs, such that we could expose them to other people, but properly track them and run the right security and right rules and logging on them.
That's awesome. So so you brought up a really interesting discussion. It's the roll your own versus buy. And I'm sure we could talk about that for hours, but basically in summary, so my job as a solutions architect is to sit down with people who are interested in buying API M, and they very transparently tell me, so Sedki, we're in the middle of making a decision. We want to see what Tyk has to offer, but we're also looking at building this ourselves. Well, all developers want to build stuff. I want to say it's a blessing and a curse. We want to build stuff because we're excited by solving problems and architecting. But to Joe's point, if you're the CTO of a company, your job isn't to build something fun. Your job is to deliver a product. And the best way to do that is to put your developers in a position where they can only focus on the domain, the product itself, as opposed to the plumbing. So talking about the plumbing itself, Joe, can you talk to us about what is Tyk used for? And then we'll loop back some other questions you brought up there.
Yeah, sure. So Tyk is very much the portal and the way that our partners get access to our core APIs that we use internally. And so Tyk is running our portal here. And so what happens is we get a partner, they end up signing a contract with us. So we don't have like an open sign up here. There's a variety of things and regulatory requirements that we have. But we get from them contract, and then we give them access here into this portal. And this gives them what they need, which is, essentially, we've got a full set of documentation in the portal, a lot of examples that we provide, and it has been quite self-service, right? I mean, we get feedback, we enhance this, we provide more examples, but we've been able to launch many partners now through this in a way that we had no way of doing prior to using Tyk.
That's awesome. In addition to the developer portal, can you talk to us about perhaps authentication? Is there rate limiting? So it seems like the monetization of your current APIs is a huge part of why you decided to purchase API management, is to basically have a hosted way of publishing your APIs and protecting them and such. So the developer portal is, of course, a big part of that. Anything else API-M that you're using today or planning on using?
Well, so we use this to provide access. We make users, we generate their keys. We do have rate limiting. It is great to be able to go into Tyk and see, because if we had tried to build it ourselves, we wouldn't have had the full range of information that's in there. But for example, we can go in and see who's getting errors, right? So here are developers. This happened to us several times. We've seen because what happens is we get an executive sponsor at a partner. The executives agree, hey, this is the great thing we're going to do. Then it gets handed off to developers. Sometimes the developers it's handed off to aren't capable of getting it done or are running into problems and are reticent to bring them up. So it's really useful to be able to go in and see, oh, these people are actually using it. These people are getting errors. These people are using it successfully. It's also useful on our end for our business development team to know, they're working, they're integrating. And, there are several different API calls and there's kind of a normal path of integration. So they're able to track all of that. And we're able to put a decent amount of additional security on top of the APIs so that we don't expose everything that we make available within our internal APIs. We have the ability to just cut it down to a certain set. One of the other things that we've done as well is that Tyk has allowed us to write custom middleware that allows us to put some enforced security rules on a per developer basis. So when we make a developer account in Tyk and we give them access, we're able to put other information in which activates proprietary security rules on our end, and that do a bunch of great things that allow us to enforce the contract terms that we have agreed to them, outside of all of the portal, but we just put a couple things in, and that security is enforced.
I understand. So for those of you itching, because Joe keeps talking about GraphQL and how the fields are being used, we'll definitely get in that. You can see some of Joe's tabs out there about example GraphQL calls. We will show you the dirties, but that's also, you brought up a couple other interesting points. I want to talk about analytics. That seems to be another source of value that you've pulled out of API-M. So just for those, just so everybody's on the same page, of all of you watching, only 14% of you are using API management platforms. About half are not using it but considering it, and then a similar percentage is not using APM or not planning on doing so. And so for those of you not planning on doing so, there's a lot of stuff here that Joe's talking about. And if you have any of those kind of questions about what's the point of the analytics, why do I need these analytics, what kind of analytics do you have, the security, the authorization, dump all those in there. But just to talk about that particular point real quick, actually, I want to talk to you about analytics, but in GraphQL as well. Perhaps you can layer them in both at the same time, Joe, or you can just address the second part. So I'll ask the question specifically. GraphQL. I want to move on to GraphQL. Why did you choose GraphQL? There's all these other technologies today. There's REST and gRPC and SOAP. What made you decide to use GraphQL?
So I have built a lot of different and architected a lot of different systems and involved in building systems. Restful, actually SOAP before REST, and increasingly in more serverless environments. So where you're trying to push a lot of you're really trying to separate front end and back end. You're really trying to run the back end as much as a managed service as you can and leverage cloud providers' expertise. And so when we started Branch, the last startup that I had done, we used Firebase, Google Firebase, for a number of things that we had done. And so I was looking for, but Firebase has a number of limitations. I was looking at getting beyond. And at that time, Emison had launched a GraphQL API as a service called AppSync. And at the time, I was aware of GraphQL, but I had heard of GraphQL as, oh, okay, here's the great thing about GraphQL. You just ask for what you want, and then it's this it's a better, like, more bandwidth sensitive version of REST. Like, that's how it was pitched to me, at least. And I sort of said, like, okay, I mean, I don't know if it's like that's a horribly compelling use case for me, because usually I feel like when we make calls, we kind of want most of the stuff back. I don't know. I don't think optimizing for, like, not sending some data makes a lot of sense, but okay, sounds interesting. And so we actually adopted GraphQL largely because AppSync had all of these additional other features that were highly beneficial. And so we ended up in a GraphQL world in order to get some of these AppSync benefits, like integrating authentication in and being able to run serverless functions without having to run a web server or deal with scaling or anything. However, now having been in GraphQL and now having run on GraphQL for 3.5 years, what I can tell you is it is dramatically better than REST in so many ways. And that original pitch was just, I think, incredibly off. I mean, it's true, but it's really off base for what I think the real values of GraphQL are. So number one, GraphQL is highly opinionated, and it's highly opinionated in ways that REST is not. You can end up with tons of internal debates. Ted, you were talking earlier about developers want to develop. Developers want to just build stuff. I mean, developers also love to argue about, like, well, wait, this is the standard. No, this is the standard. And REST is like a great battlefield on which senior developers can, do war. The great thing about GraphQL is way more opinionated than REST. Like, there just are many fewer battles you can fight because GraphQL is GraphQL. And so there's much less judgment. But even better, and this is specific to some of the other architectural choices we have, but GraphQL, if you use GraphQL and you use JavaScript on the front end and JavaScript on the back end, and you use like a key value store like we use DynamoDB, there are no schema changes along the way. So your data is JSON in the front end, it's JSON through the API, it's JSON in our Node.js in the back end, and it's JSON in DynamoDB. And so there's so much code and so many bugs and so much pain that happens around data transformation in an ORM and around the database. So usually it's like relational database, then there's like Ruby on Rails using an ORM, Then there's other schema changes into your API, then other schema changes that have to happen into your front end, and so much pain. You add a column, you do whatever. This is just excess and painful code. And so having this centralized schema that lives in your API definition that then syndicates across front, back end databases is just this amazing decomplexification, simplification, highly opinionated application architecture that, like, I will never live any other way because of it. I mean, GraphQL is the only way to go, especially if you're building greenfield and you have a lot of these opportunities. I will also tell you that most of the partners who integrate with us, we are the first time they have ever seen or worked with GraphQL. And my experience is it's not that hard for them. It takes people a while to realize. I mean, the other cool thing about GraphQL being opinionated is if you use any like standard GraphQL knowledgeable editor when you're building the queries, it'll throw you errors like, hey, you need a comma here, or like this isn't a valid syntax, in a way that Restful APIs can never do. And so a lot of time, I would say like 80% of the like, hey, why isn't this working to us is like a screenshot from one of the editors we recommended that has an error on it. It's like, you need a comma here. And it's so great to go, actually, yeah, that's right. You need a comma there. And it works. And so it's amazing. I think it's a very intuitive way to run an API. So we even though everyone we work with, really, it's the first time they've seen it, they don't have any problem working with it. And it's been great.
Wow, what a thorough answer. Thank you. I know there's a lot of people in here, specifically about the point about it's JSON across the board. I know there's some very opinionated people that go, no, I want a transformation layer. I want to be able to control. I don't want to expose my database. I mean, I don't know if you have an opinion on that. What would you say to those folks?
So what you actually get access to from us is not everything that's in the database. It's a subset, right? So we're constantly masking the whole way. And depending on what your access key is and who you are, you're getting access to like a different schema. But what I would say is that method of enforcement of rules, which is there's going to be a subset and there's going to be some data masking, right? So like some people, one classic thing that we do is that we store in our database date of birth, but we return age. Because date of birth is much more sensitive PII than age. And so like that's something we're constantly doing. So you can't send in age, you send in date of birth, but you get age back. Which is fine because that's what people want for confirmation. But I would tell you that like you could say like I want obfuscation or I don't want people to get full access to what's in my database. And what I would tell you is I think the better solution is defining these like masking, transformation, or subset selection rules, which GraphQL and something like Tyk makes trivially easy. The schema in Tyk is a subset of the schema that we are using ourselves. And what's great is that instead of having to read code to decipher what are my security rules, it's really simple. I can just look at the schema. And what's great about GraphQL is it enforces the schema. So if date of birth isn't in the schema, you're not getting date of birth. It cannot come to you. That's a lot better security, a lot better testable security than some sort of obfuscatory version of that.
Mm-hmm. Joe, it looks like your video is cut out for me. I don't know if it's a me issue.
It's just it keeps going back and forth, but
okay.
It's saying
no,
on off.
That's great. Hey, I challenge you. You've heard Joe's response about JSON all the way through, and you've heard his response to I can obfuscate. I invite you to challenge him further with your questions about that. It's always good to put people on the spot. I apologize, Joe. But to move on, I want to know about, so you mentioned, Joe, that your partners have not faced too great of a challenge. So talk to us about some of the challenges besides that. So not only the challenges on the partner level, but I want to know about the developers that are working at Branch. How have they faced adopting GraphQL as a technology?
I mean, really, it's been incredibly easy. It's a lot. I mean, so I went through the SOAP, which I could talk about for hours as to what the problems were with SOAP. And RESTful APIs were a response to SOAP, right? It's just too complicated and it doesn't work, and every implementation is different and they're not compatible with each other. And so at least, we went with RESTful APIs, we went like, let's just make it easy. Let's make it simple, because most APIs are simple at that time, especially. But then we built up all these conventions, but we built them up on not a solid foundation. And so when you approach RESTful APIs or building RESTful APIs, again, there's so many judgment calls that if you asked 3 people to develop the same, maybe relatively simple API, they're going to develop it totally differently. And so when you bring people to integrate with it, they're all similarly not going to have a native sense of like, this is the right way to do this thing. That's not the case with GraphQL. GraphQL is very much based around data structures that we expect to see. And so at Branch, I mean, essentially every developer we hire is a front end, has front end capability, front end development, knows React, certainly knows JSON data structures, and the libraries that exist for querying GraphQL are just very simple. And so you kind of show somebody a couple queries and then it just works. Again, the libraries are fantastic. I mean, especially the JavaScript libraries like Apollo is just a phenomenally good library. And so it just works. I mean, you've got examples and they happen in our, in our documentation here. One of the things that we do, which I like a lot, is, I give people a curl call. I always find that very useful. I love it when, when an API will tell me, this is what it looks like from a much more ground level view. I think this is actually very helpful, this showing someone like, hey, look, like a GraphQL call is going to be, this GraphQL language, but, realistically, all that's happening is a very simple HTTP request, which is you're just sending authorization, you're just saying it's JSON, and then you're just going to send the query like as text in the data block. That's it. And so, and then you go through, you run the queries, and it's simple. So my experience is everybody gets it. It makes kind of intuitive sense, and then you're off and running, and it just feels like second nature after you spend some time with it.
Okay, appreciate that. So we're looking here at this Get Started page. There's some examples here. Can you talk to us a little bit more about how you're leveraging the Universal Data Graph and GraphQL within your solution and at Tyk?
Yeah, I mean, probably one of the simplest things would be to show. This is so one of the things that's great about the Tyk Developer Portal is that I can give people a login. They log in, and then they can do a couple of things that are great. So one is they can browse documentation in the context of the portal. And so in GraphQL, you have queries and mutations, and essentially everybody starts with us as I want to get a price for insurance. And so we have a number of queries, not too many, but one of them is called request quote, and that's where you start. And so if you click on this, and what's great about the way Tyk interprets the GraphQL schema is that you can decorate all of it, and so all the documentation lives in the schema, and then it gets displayed here. But you submit some input values, first name, last name, address, like what we talked about, and then you can get a price back, and then you ask what you get back. So I can go and see that my request quote call gives back an offer, and that offer has various details. I can see in my query here, I've got options, and I get a bunch of different things like a name of an option, and you can see I've got here home total. I could go scroll down and see the total amount. That's what the home part of the policy is going to cost. And what's great is I can hit run, and this is going to go make that query to the server. It pulls a lot of data back, and then boom, here's my price, and here are all the things I asked to get back. So there's my home total. So if I'm just buying home alone, it's $797. If I buy it in a bundle, the home's $693. And so, all of this, what was great about all this is, we have our schema, we have our API. When we set up Tyk, we, went through our schema, we pulled out all the things we didn't want to provide to partners. We, made sure the documentation that we had in the schema was correct, and we published it. And then we create an account, and then this just works. People log in, and immediately upon somebody getting an email with a login, they just come in here, and we tell them, go run these queries and see what it is, and then they're just off and running, and then they can play around with the query in here, and then that makes it easier when they move it into their code that they know like sort of what it's supposed to look like and how it works.
It looks like a really good user experience. For those of you who aren't familiar, what we're looking at is the GraphQL Playground. It's a way to consume GraphQL. It's think of Swagger or Open API spec for REST. It's a way you get IntelliSense. So if Joe goes in there and actually hits Command Space, it will actually fill in a bunch of fields for him. So it's just an intuitive way of consuming GraphQL. Joe, talk to us about this data. So here we have we can see it's very easy to read. So I'm making a query that's called request quote, and I can see there's a user input, and this mirrors that test that you showed us earlier with how easy it was to fetch information. It looks like it's actually using the same API, and then I can see by reading the query there's all these different fields. I get options and the fields that belong to options. Where is this data coming from? How are you building this on the back end? Does the consumer have to worry about it? There's a couple questions.
No, not at all. So we, this is all of the things that we built, for our own web application. All of these things that are running in Amazon Web Services, AWS AppSync, the database, all the data sources, all of the custom code we use to go retrieve data and generate your price. All of this, we think of it as, we've got, our own, ourbranch.com website is hitting this API. And then our partners are hitting Tyk, which is then in turn hitting our servers, but with our sort of level of protection and logging that is specific to those partners and rate limiting as well. It's also worth noting that Tyk gives us a development environment, a staging, and we run a development environment, staging environment, production environment. And so when we invite developers in, and that's where I am here, actually, you can see it's the staging environment. But when I invite developers in here, I am able to give them access to this test universe. So this is just a sample universe, sample people, so no PII is here. So that allows all these developers to work in this. They can sort of test it, play around with it, etc. And then when we give them access to the production environment, they've essentially tested all of the things and should generally work properly when they flip over there.
So there's a couple questions in there. The first one, so we've talked about GraphQL and its benefits, and it's clear that you're an advocate for it. It's obviously working for your solution. But and we kind of talked about some of the challenges of GraphQL, but I want you to kind of, let's dive back into that. What are some of the challenges of GraphQL? Perhaps not only on the integration front for the people that want to build on top of your APIs, but some of the GraphQL adoption that you and your developers have personally faced as well.
I think the biggest challenges do come down to people not being familiar with it and sometimes sort of thinking like, wow, do I really have to structure everything? Is everything sort of these structured queries? And is everything I have to sort of get things back? And so you do end up crafting some queries, and some of the ways you do things seem a little like in the typical very simple, let's say, Restful API call where like you call an API with a stock ticker symbol and you get the current price, right? Mm-hmm. In GraphQL, those sort of very simple queries feel silly. And so usually in my experience, usually you don't actually ever build that. And so we don't have a ton that's like that, but occasionally you'll have someone come in. This is especially like on our development side. And they are sort of like, well, I need this information. And so, how do I do this thing that seems kind of silly in GraphQL? And usually, I would say actually always, that's not the right way to think about that information. Like, does anybody ever actually only want the current price of a stock? Like, you want to, you want to know like the chart of over some period of time, and there's some array or something, right? So usually there isn't a need for just a single item, but it's, you know, in the way I think in good software architecture and development and design, where you go back and you're like, okay, what problem are we trying to solve? You know, where does this fit in context? How does the user think about it? That then drives you to think more in structures instead of into single items. I think that's probably the biggest piece that has been a challenge. Yeah,
That makes sense. Thank you.
I'll give you.
Go ahead.
I'll give you one other one. Actually, is that sometimes GraphQL schema can feel a little limiting. There, you know, essentially you get a couple types and you can say this is required or this isn't required. You can't do things that would be nice, like this is conditionally required on this other thing. That would be a great thing to do. It doesn't let you. And the types, you know, in certain circumstances, there are extensions to types, but in main GraphQL, there isn't like a date type or an email type. And you might like that type of validation, especially like date time. That, you know, that those can be great validations that you could have. But you know, in general, it's a smaller universe of types that's supported.
Fair point. Okay. Well, for those of you who have experienced some kind of GraphQL problems, if you think the barrier to entry is higher than that or less than that, you know, please let us know, or we'll be happy to talk about it in some more detail. But yeah, let's move on to. I want to know how your developers. I want to know the connection of how your developers are building versus exposing things on Tyk. So what do I mean by that? Well, so it's nice of it to think of Tyk as an abstraction layer, and I'll let you talk about that. But we have this concept of our API that we're building, and then this concept of the API GraphQL that we're exposing. So talk to us about how your developers are thinking about this, the life cycle of building and publishing APIs, and that whole journey.
Yeah, and you know, the way that we used to think about this with RESTful APIs was harder, I think, than GraphQL. But in a RESTful API context, we tend to think about versioned APIs, right? So it's like, okay, we're going to make a version, we're going to put it out here, and then like anything we're going to change about it, it's got to be a new version, because like I can't even conceptualize how to do backwards compatibility. The cool thing about GraphQL is that it's relatively easy, as you change things over time, to keep some level of backwards compatibility. You can still version, you know, GraphQL API, but like a database, you know, you can make rules in a database that are like, we're never going to change the type of a column. We're never going to delete a column, right? We'll only, like, you know, deprecate the use of a column, and we'll make new columns, and we'll make new tables. And so you can put enforcement rules, and those same type of rules layered onto a schema, generally speaking, mean that you can actually have a living API as you develop it. And so what's great about that is, unless you add new required fields in existing calls in a schema, then generally speaking, you can continue to develop your schema and add new functionality for yourself while delaying the publishing of that, or while deciding how you're going to expose those things through Tyk. And so, you know, Tyk also gives us the ability, if we were to dramatically change the API, that we could continue to support the old API or the way the current API is set up. And in fact, you know, we have made substantial changes and substantial additions to our API since we brought partners onto it, but they really haven't noticed any difference. I mean, we've added a couple things in response to what they've wanted, but the ones who have been using it successfully just keep using it, and they don't, you know, they're totally happy with it. Don't need to make any changes to it. And so, you know, I think it is really important to have that, the ability to proxy, right? The ability to have a different system with its own schema and its own rules and ability to accept sort of full requests from our partners so that we can meet their needs of not breaking that, right? Because I mean, it would be very bad for us if those partners integrated and then we just broke it, right? I mean, that it would be very bad for that relationship. And whereas internally, we will like to add things all the time. And so we are constantly adding things, and we are constantly adding things to the front and the back end together in order to get those features. And so, you know, Tyk is giving us this ability, and I think of it as the abstraction layer benefit, but I would agree that, you know, that may be too simplistic of a term or not invoke the right visions in people's minds as a term as to like all of the benefits you get out of it.
Well, it's a very thorough answer. Thank you. So in essence, Tyk allows you to make changes while maintaining backwards compatibility. So this is also majorly a benefit of GraphQL, not just Tyk, is that you can extend your GraphQL schema, and those who are using it will continue to use it and notice no difference. So that definitely makes a lot more sense. Any other lessons that you've learned that you can share with us in the journey so far, whether it pertains to GraphQL or API management in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing we've learned is that it's really important when we bring people on to talk them through it, to have examples, to heavily encourage that people make the example calls. Having the example calls, having the GraphQL Playground, and telling people this is what you have, you then test it out and give them suggestions. That's helped dramatically. In terms of on our side, I mean, Tyk and, you know, you, Seti, personally have been like very helpful. So I would highly recommend using like Tyk Customer Success and also Tyk Sync. Tyk Sync is a great tool that, because what you want, everything should be infrastructure as code, and your entire configuration of Tyk and systems like Tyk should be done in code, should be in a repository. You should make the changes there. You should push them out to environments. And so Tyk has, there is an open source project, I think, called Tyk Sync that allows you to do this. And like, it's absolutely what you should be doing, because without it, you have this same problem of, well, I'm having to customize the infrastructure through a control panel. And I don't remember exactly what I did every time.
That's awesome. GitOps has definitely been a trend that's exploding. It's getting more and more popular. So definitely, that's a whole conversation on its own. So let's talk about what's next. What's next for Branch here? What does the future hold? Is any new projects or new technologies that you're gonna roll out that you can tell us about?
You know, our primary focus is launching new states, launching new partners. And so, you know, we do have an increasing number of partners who just do different things and want to do different types of integrations. And so, you know, we have some fun development in progress that involves other apps on your phone, like home security-based apps, being able to talk to our APIs through Tyk. You know, let's say there's a home security company, you've got their app that they can actually just sell you insurance right there in the app. They can actually, based upon the home security equipment you have in the monitoring package, you can just press a button and then they'll just tell you, this is how much you're going to save on your home insurance, on your auto insurance, and you just click here to buy it. And so, you know, a lot of that building in, it's also useful to note that every state in the US, you have to make a separate insurance product for and get it approved by that state's regulators. And so when you do that, every state has slightly different things. And so the API tends to have to grow, like, okay, we need to offer earthquake coverage in California, for example, or things like that. And so, you know, all of that gets added as well. So those are the things, but more states, you know, more partners, more customers.
More growth. I love it. That's awesome. Thank you. Well, I'm going to go ahead and pull Sharon back in. Thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate you taking the time to answer my questions here. So now I'd like to answer the questions that have come in during the webinar. So if there's anything else, keep them coming. Otherwise, over to you, Sharon.
Awesome. That was incredible, you guys. Thank you so much. All right. So
thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. come back anytime. All right. First question. When can we use Kafka subscriptions in GraphQL and also JDBC?
I'll take that one. So, the question that came in is about the universal data graph. So, the 10-second explanation that I mentioned at the beginning is that what you can do is you can take all of these disparate backend services and combine them into a single GraphQL schema, which is how Joe and Branch have architected it. So currently, the data sources that you can plug in as of today are GraphQL and then HTTP, so REST and so gRPC. Those data sources we can plug into our universal data graph. And the question was JDCV and a Kafka stream, not scream. Please don't scream at Kafka. That will be coming, I believe, I'm really going to shoot myself in the foot here. I believe that's coming in version 3.3. So that will be coming in our next major release. We just released version 3.2. We actually rewrote the GraphQL engine to be much more scalable and performant. It's written in Golang and very fast. And so now that performance is I don't want to say finished because that's never finished. That's an ongoing thing. Our next focus is on is allowing you to do subscriptions. So converting your streaming APIs such as Kafka into plugging that into GraphQL, providing it as a subscription, as well as allowing you to put in more data sources. So I think the magic number is version 3.3. That'll be coming in the next couple months.
All right. Next, yeah.
Over to you, Sharon.
Yeah, and I think this one's probably more for Joe. Why publish your APIs? How do you hope people will build on top of them?
Well, you know, I mean, from our at Branch, we were asked by partners, hey, we want to build the thing that you've built. And so, you know, we think of them probably less as like we've published them and publicly. It's more like we've had partners come to us or potential partners or insurance agents. And they've said, you've got this superpower that's amazing and you're using it. Can we use it too? And so it's, you know, and we're interested in having more customers, and we're happy to have people, you know, buy Branch through however they would like to. And we're happy to empower partners to make their products better using what, you know, we've built. And so all of that, you know, makes a lot of sense for us to publish or make those APIs available to them.
Let me ask a follow-up question to that. So how, because to me, if I was to look at it very from a narrow perspective, it feels like providing your engine, this awesome engine that you built, providing that to others is a competitive disadvantage. So tell me why I'm wrong with that thinking. Help me understand the right way to think about it.
I mean, we make, well, we're built, you know, we're really built to lower the cost of insurance for everyone. And the best way to lower the cost of insurance for everyone is to have lots of people in the community, you know, paying for insurance. And so we want as many people as possible to be Branch customers. That's our primary goal. And so as long as you're buying, you know, we take a very small portion for ourselves, and then everything else, you know, we're just trying to do at cost. And so we just want more. I mean, that's really what it is. And insurance is a communal good, right? It's about risk sharing in a community. And so we're happy to have you come in the door however you want, you know, as long as you're a Branch, member of the Branch community, and Branch is the provider of your insurance. Branch is who you call when you have a claim. Like, that's what we want. So happy to have you come in however you would like to.
That's really informative. Thank you. It's a way of scaling out. I understand. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. I'm not sure if this is for Sedkey or Joe, but you guys are using opaque tokens for your integrations with customers?
That's for Joe.
Yeah, I mean, they're private. Yeah, they're private keys or private tokens. So the way that Tyk, I mean, there are a variety of ways to configure this, but the way that we have Tyk set up is we create a user, and then we generate an API key for them that is attached to a policy, and that policy can have rate limiting and a whole bunch of other, can contain a lot within it. And so we provide that token to them in an encrypted way, usually in a one-time link. So they go to the link, it destroys the link, and they get that token. And then that's what they need to use and store on their end. And if they ever lose it, we can just make another one. But we don't keep them. But yes, so that's exactly what's happening. And in fact, you can, in my shared screen, you can see the beginning of the token in here, that's down here, that's being shared. But it's very long.
And I'll add to that answer. So with API management, you get the benefit of being able to manage all of those tokens from that single dashboard. And so you can go in, you can revoke tokens that you think are compromised, you can and rotate them. You can see how they're being used. And so there's a few good follow-up questions coming in that I'll ask Joe. I think you can see those. So from Bruno here, he's asking if that's secure, if the approach if this is a secure approach, why not expose, for example, a temporary JWT?
I mean, from a security perspective, it's not any different. I mean, this is it's a secret. It's not sent in, this is sent always over HTTPS. So, I mean, any sort of private information exchange is going to be the same. I mean, this is actually this interesting question. We have had people say to us in other contexts, well, I feel a lot more comfortable if I have to go to you. I take the secret you've given me, I swap it for something, and then that's good for like an hour. And then I have to go get another token from you. We could do that. It just, from a security perspective, it's not any different, right? I mean, well, from a security perspective, you would have to believe that there are people who can intermittently sniff your request, but can't get your first request. And I just from an attack vector, that's just, I mean, I don't know. I've also served as the chief information security officer for 3 startups now over 12 years. And I've never seen that attack vector that says occasionally someone's going to sniff a packet. And so what you're trying to do is make it so the majority of your packets don't have a reusable token in them. And just not my experience that's a reasonable way to, that happens, or B, you need to worry about that beyond anything else. Honestly, in my experience, what I know working with enterprises is that when you have that token swap and expiration, what happens is enterprises are really bad about the expiration. And so what you'll find is that what they end up doing is making 2 requests for every request, because they're really bad at identifying that it's about to expire and finding it. And so what happens is they put it live, and then they find that they have a bunch of requests failing, and someone gets really mad, and they're like, we got to fix it. And they're like, okay, fine. We're just going to go request, get the token, and make that one. And every request, get a new token. And guess what? All you've done then is you've made the actual round trip twice as long or worse. And it's definitely not more secure, because you're making twice as many requests then. So again, my experience in the practical world is that the token swap is a theoretical security theater benefit, and you're a lot better off solving other legit attack vectors that will compromise you, have an aggressive anti-phishing program, pay a company money to phish all your employees constantly, and to spear phish and socially engineer your employees. That's the likely information security problem you're going to have is someone convinces your HR department to give all of your employees' personal information and their information stolen. I said implement the refresh token. There is, right. I mean, if you have refresh tokens, then it's equally not even useful to do token swaps, in my opinion. Yeah. Sorry, I know that was a long answer, but I just, I think this is great. I think it's simple. But I think you can implement token swaps and that can be an enterprise requirement. I mean, I've seen it certainly.
And I would definitely add to that. I completely agree with Joe in terms of the security benefits. The JWT and a short-lived opaque token are going to be virtually the same, right? A JWT doesn't inherently have any more security in it. Of course, you could go to MTLS or something else, but the entry to barrier that's going to add is just not feasible. It's not something that's required. And so if you're yeah, for the use case, it just doesn't make sense between using a JWT and an auth token or some other way of doing it. You know, maybe we can talk about using OAuth flows, and now we're talking about, okay, so what's the use case? Because with OAuth flows, are we going to make it so it's system APIs? What about apps that build on top where there's a user involved? So how is that going to work? And now we're adding a lot of different complexity. And so Bruno says, oh, we should have brought you on as a panelist, Bruno. This is really good stuff. He says, opaque cannot transport claims. Oh, okay, you're talking about an opaque JWT token. Yeah, well, no, I definitely agree with Joe. I'm not sure I see the difference between that and just a regular off GUI token if they're short-lived.
Okay. All right. I think we've got time for probably one more. Let's see what we can find here. And I don't know this acronym, so my apologies if I screw this one up. But how about LATAM?
I don't know that acronym either.
Latin America. Just Latin.
What was the context?
We don't sell insurance in Latin America, sadly. But
oh, okay.
See, here I'm like, a new security protocol, or like, nope.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Do the other question.
Wow, I really screwed that up.
That makes two of us. So we're waiting for it up here as well, Guillermo. Okay. Do the other question. Do the other question from Mr. Josh P. Just to be clear, by the way, so Tyk does, we're a global company, so if you need to purchase API management products or GraphQL product, we're global. Joe is talking about you can't purchase branch insurance in Latin America, but you know, maybe ask him in a couple of years.
Gotcha. All right. So finally, when would you not use GraphQL?
Ooh, good luck, Joe.
Yeah.
You know, I think the reality is you have to implement a spec sometimes, and the spec is REST or RESTful. I do think there are potentially trivial APIs that are just simpler as a RESTful API. But I think those are the only cases. But I actually do think that this need to make like webhooks or to do things that people expect there aren't GraphQL webhook isn't the thing as far as I know. So, you know, that there are certain things where, and I think it probably makes more sense for webhooks to be RESTful, but you know, where that's the spec. But it largely is like, if you have trivial APIs, I think it's fine to have them as RESTful and maybe simpler. But I think as soon as you're building anything sort of robust, especially if you're building it from scratch or you're building it for third parties from scratch, I don't know why you would choose anything other than GraphQL.
All right, folks. Well, that's about all the time we have for Q&A. If you did have a question, you've got about 2 minutes to send it in, and then we will pass those along to Sedkey and Joe, and they will get back to you offline. But for now, I'm going to wrap up here. Just a reminder that the session has been recorded, so if you missed any or all of it, you can absolutely go back and watch it again. We'll be sending an email out with instructions for how to access the webinar on demand. You can also visit us at devops.com/webinars. It will be there for you as well. Finally, let's do our drawing quickly for the Amazon gift card winners, because I know you've all been waiting for that. All right. Our first winner here is Josh S. Congratulations, Josh. Next, our next winner is Chris P. Congratulations, Chris. Our next winner is Tom T. Congratulations, Tom. And finally, John B. Congratulations to all our Amazon winners. All right. Well, I want to thank Sedke and Joe for spending so much time going over this with us. And to the audience, thank you so much for tuning in and spending an hour here with us as well. I am Sharon Florentine. See you next time. Signing off.